In this video, we're going to be looking at different ways that we can actually measure the performance of Agile teams. We'll be looking at a number of different techniques that we can use to try and understand how teams are working, how efficient they're being, and better ways that we can start to figure out how to use these metrics to improve teams going forward. We'd use these metrics in things like our sprint reviews so that we can start to see how teams are working and try and understand how we can get them to work more efficiently in the future. So why is it important for us to actually look at measuring Agile team performance? Well, we really want to see how we're actually going from having our requirements and how these are being translated into working software. And we've got a number of different things that we care about with that. But inside of Agile, we don't really value documentation as much as we value other aspects. It doesn't mean that we don't value documentation at all, it's just that we value other things more. So when we're thinking about measuring Agile team performance, we're really trying to find ways that we can measure that performance in ways that don't impact upon the team directly. We want to try and find ways that we can get easy to collect data so that the team doesn't actually need to spend a lot of time trying to gather this data themselves. We really want to try and gather data that is based on real work instead of estimates, and we really want to try and visualize this data as well so that people can easily see how work is going. If customers are coming into your environment, they can see how the work is progressing. If you've got product owners on site, they can see. If you are doing your daily stand-ups, which are only going to be about 10 minutes, you can quickly visualize how people are working. And another important thing about this is that these visualizations and this gathering of data, it's not used to appraise the team. It's not used to say you as an individual are doing badly or you as a team are doing really well because you've got nice graphs. It's used as an information source to actually show how you're performing and then to look at how likely you are to kind of finish the work that you're doing and to more accurately give estimates to the customer about how long specific parts of the project are going to take. So the first thing that we can look at is this term called velocity. So velocity is really a measure of how much a team can accomplish in a given amount of time. How much a team can accomplish in a given iteration. And for us, that iteration for your coursework is going to be 1 week. Okay, it's the sum of all of the story points, we'll come to story points tomorrow, that a team can deliver in a set amount of time. So they might say, well, we believe that we will be able to complete 50 story points within an iteration. That might not be right. You might do a little bit more. So for the next one, you might say, okay, we think we'll be able to deliver 60 story points for this iteration. And you might pick more user stories, more requirements that you can do. And you can use this to actually try and figure out, well, this plan of how much velocity we're actually going to have compared to the actual velocity that we have. Is there any difference there? And do we have any kind of understanding for why that difference occurred? If we're able to understand that, then we can better plan our work going forward. Ideally, for Agile teams, this idea of planned velocity, it only really starts to work from sprint 4 or 5. This creates some challenges for us, especially in this module, because we're only doing 2 sprints. So our first one is really kind of finger in the air and hope for the best. The second one, we might have a little bit of a better idea, and we might get you to estimate for your 3rd sprint. But even for that, it can still be a little bit difficult to understand because you've only got 2 data points to work on. Okay. We can also look inside of sprints at something that we call release burn down charts. What this is doing is this is showing how much work we're actually managing to do. How much or what point we actually thought we'd be finishing a project and how much work we actually managed to get done. If we compare this burn down chart to this chart here, what the planned versus actual velocity chart is showing us is how accurately we are able to say, well, this is how much work we think we're going to be doing. What the burn down chart is saying, well, this is where we expect to be in terms of the project progress as it progresses over time versus where we actually are at a given point over time as well. We can use these burn down charts as a really good way to see how quickly we're able to complete different elements inside of a project and to look at how long a project is likely going to take. With this one, we can see that the planned burn down actually seems to be a lot faster than the actual burn down. So we might need an 8th iteration in this project to finish off all of the work that we'd said we would do. We can also have a burn up chart. The difference here is that the planned level of work can change. We might decide in a project that some stories which were worth, say, 7 points at one point are now worth 11 points, 12 points at a different point in time. Some stories which we thought would be very, very complicated might end up being very easy to do. And you can see this via the planned line, and it's not a straight line this time. The planned line actually goes up and down a little bit. And this is taking into consideration the fact that we are iteratively going back and looking at our requirements backlog every single time that we're doing a retrospective. Every single time that we're starting our sprints, we're able to look at things and go, actually, I don't think that's going to take as much time, but this one will. And it means that this line changes. It also means that when we're looking at how much work we've completed, we're not overly sure of the exact point in which we're going to be completing things. But again, that's fine, because with Agile, it's really about trying to make sure that we're looking at this as a very kind of wide-ranging activity. The benefits of doing this means that the customer is also able to see that the work that you're doing is not solid. Okay, it's always going to be in flux. The requirements are constantly going to be changing. And the fact that this line isn't solid embraces the idea that changing requirements are part of the Agile process. Another thing that we can do is we can use something that's called parking lots. These are used quite a lot for kind of Kanban type things. I've never used these as much in Scrum type environments, but they're used as a way to show progress towards kind of larger scale things that are kind of bigger than user stories. And this is something that we'll cover tomorrow. With this, we can split our user stories into larger themes, and we can say, well, we've done X many of the stories that are attached to this theme, we've done X many of the stories that are attached to this theme, and we can see the progress for these different things as we go along. Each of these parking lots has a number of different features that we add to them. So we give them a name, we give the number of stories that are attached to each one, we give the number of story points that are attached to each one, and we say the percentage of completion. This is the sort of stuff that you'd probably be able to easily do inside of like a project management system. So even inside of Excel, you'd probably be able to make something that would take all of these things and make a parking lot style visualization for you to use. We've already talked about Kanban boards and how we can use Kanban boards as a method to look at all of the work that we're doing. Kanban boards as an information radiator are a really powerful way to show the specific user stories that are being worked on, and it also lets you see your work in progress limits, so you can start to visualize how much work you have going on at an individual point in time. It also has this expedite lane, and remember, we can use that expedite lane as a way to show here are the things that we're viewing as a top priority that we really want to work on. Okay, so those are some of the different ways that we can actually use Agile performance metrics to measure performance. You'll notice there that there's nothing really there about measuring performance of individuals, and there's nothing really there to say that the performance measures that we're using are looking at a team and measuring how well a team is doing so that we can say, yes, you're doing good, no, you're not doing good. It's all looked at giving information. It's about letting people see the wider picture and trying to figure out how this then fits in to understanding the project and the changing requirements nature of Agile work. Hopefully you found that useful. In the next few videos, we're now going to look at teamwork and how we can actually start to understand how teams actually behave when they're formed and how we can better equip people to take part in these kind of activities.